In this lesson, we are going to look at numbers that are between 0 and 1 and the numbers that are between the whole numbers. There's a nice concept that we can explore, and that is we can divide this space between every unit into 10 smaller units. Here we see the same number line that we looked at before in the previous video. Notice again, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's look at the numbers between 1 and 2. Remember, we can divide the space between every two numbers into 10 smaller units. Now let's zoom in between numbers 1 and 2. You see again we have our 10 units. But look at how we can write them. Notice the similarities between the numbers that are in between 1 and 2 to our regular counting sequence. To show that we are dealing with numbers that are greater than 1, but less than 2, we can put the decimal point and then start the counting sequence over again. The 1 in the front acts kind of like a base that lets you know you're still dealing with the numbers in between 1 and 2. The number that is after the decimal point allows you to know that you're dealing with a smaller set of numbers. If we put the 0 in after the 1 and after the 2, along with a decimal point of course, we can really see how the counting sequence is repeated. It sort of looks like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And we can use that concept later on with computation to help us and assist us in making what seems like complex calculations easier. Now we can use the same concept of dividing the space between every unit into 10 smaller units by exploring these two numbers here, 1.4 and 1.5. Let's zoom in between those two numbers and see this concept repeated. Notice again we can divide the space between these two numbers into even smaller numbers. Notice now the number that is directly after the decimal point stays the same to indicate that we are still in between 1.4 and 1.5. But right after the 4 in each of those digits in between, we see the counting sequence repeated. And if you look closely after the decimal point, if we put a 0 after the first and last, it looks like we're saying 40, 41, 42, 43, etc. And this concept makes it really easy, and this is why most people prefer the decimal system in terms of counting and calculations. Once again, look at the last digits and you see the same counting sequence, the same progression, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then capping off with the 1.50. Now later on, we're going to learn how to say these numbers correctly. But let's explore the concept one more time. Let's look at the numbers between 1.47 and 1.48. If we zoom in between there, once again, we can create 10 more smaller units. And notice now the second digit behind the decimal point, the 7, lets us know that we're dealing with numbers that are still going to be in between 1.47 and 1.48. But notice the last digits starting after the 1.47 indicate which value you are at in between those two numbers. Putting the zeros at the end of 1.47 and 1.48 allow us to see the numbers better. Now, putting a 0 after each of those digits does not change the value of the number. It only helps us to understand it a bit better. And we can keep on doing this, and the smaller the number gets, the more digits we have. And that's how it works on the decimal part, which we are going to explore in greater detail really soon.